Hello, and welcome to Winning Their Hearts, Personalizing Classroom Climate and Instruction. My name is Marley Knapp, and I will be leading you through this journey of getting to know your kids on a deeper level and using that information to really enhance their lessons and differentiate and personalize your classroom instruction. On the bottom of this slide, you will see a link, the bit.ly/bold data 2023. That will take you to this slideshow. And there's also a QR code so you can jump to it as well. So welcome. On this page right here on slide 2, I have some little tasks for you to do to get started. At the bottom where the little pink box is, there's a quick survey to take so I can kind of get to know you. And you can also connect up with other people that are participating in this presentation or this workshop, to connect it with people that have the same subject you teach or the same area you work in, so you can maybe collaborate later after we're done with this presentation. And you'll be able to have a link to the results from this survey so you can see what other people have shared and what their area is. And then you'll be able to have access to that after the slides are done, after you watch this video. Anything that's linkable here will stay here so you can access it later. Also, after you're done with your survey, jump on the Padlet. There's a link right here to the Padlet, and it looks like this page right here. So in column 1, we're going to introduce ourselves. And we're going to tell us who we are, where we are, what we do, and which kitten are you right now. Are you nervous? Number 1. Curious? Number 2. Need more coffee? Number 3. Mind blown? Number 4. Processing? Number 5. Or bring it? Number 6. You're ready to go? Bring it on. And also tell us something exciting you did this summer or will do before school starts. So I have shared my information. I am a digital learning coordinator at Uwari Charter Academy in Asheboro. I do believe I'm cat number 4 right now. I'm usually cat number 4. This summer, I plan to go to St. Augustine in a couple of weeks, so I am excited about that. So go on and jump on and share some things in the Padlet and take the survey. At any time you need to, just hit pause on the video and you'll be able to jump in and do some of the tasks or explore some of the resources, and then you can hit play again and we'll jump right back in. So I'm going to jump into the digital learning standards that we are addressing with this workshop presentation. These digital learning standards are from ISTE. If you click on any of the links at the top, you will see the link that takes you to the standards. So for educators, let's jump and take a look. Educators have 7 different main areas: learner, leader, citizen, collaborator, designer, facilitator, and analyst. And if you drop that down, you'll see a lot more details on the subsets of that main category. And when you mouse over, you get some more detail. So this is going to tell you a lot about the different standards as a teacher that ISTE has for the digital learning standards for teacher. There is also one for students. And they're all about empowered learner, digital citizen, knowledge constructor, innovative designer, computational thinker, creative communicator, and global collaborator. These are all very forward-thinking standards for our kids. I really like them because it's really taking us to another level in our instruction with our kids. We're getting deeper on a more intense knowledge level and more skills for the student. There's also one for our administrators and administrators at the school system level. So there are ones for educational leaders, all about your planning and your vision for your school or your district. So we are hitting these standards with this session today. Under the educators, leader, designer, and facilitator. Under the educational leaders, visionary planner, and empowering leader. And under the students, empowered learner, creative communicator, and global collaborator. So it's hitting most of the substandards within those main set categories. Our goals for today are to share some information we would like to gather from our students, or stuff that we already tend to gather from our students. We'll explore some sample surveys that I have used with my students that I use to gather all this information, and we'll also get a chance to start our own survey. Explore ways to organize that data to determine needs and grouping possibilities. So there's only a lot of data coming up as you get the results from your survey. So how do we plow through all that? And then explore and share some personalized lesson ideas, and so you can have a chance to begin your own lesson design. If you have any questions, jump into the Padlet under the questions column and just add them underneath there. Anytime you need to add, just hit the plus button, and I will go back and answer them either in here or get back in touch with you. You're welcome to share your contact information here in the slide or here in the questions. If you don't have questions, you're not required to share your contact information unless you just want to. All right, let's talk about gathering information from our students. What type of things do we like to gather? We're going to take in the actual physical session a gallery walk where we will just walk through some posters around the room and share some information based on some learning categories. Like, what do you want to know when it comes to how they learning styles, or their hobbies, their interests, and their skills? Personal information you might need to know about or want to know about, things that are their favorites or other. So kind of be thinking about what you would do as you're watching this video. Just kind of be thinking about what you would do or what kind of things do you want to gather from your students, or do you already gather? In the physical session, we'll be visiting each poster and sharing stickies, and put stickies under each of the posters as to what kind of information you'd like to gather for your kids or you think you might want to. And then for the other posters, share information that you want to know about your kids that are not related to those 4 categories. We're eventually going to be taking pictures of all those posters and putting them on this page during the actual physical sessions. But here's just a little tidbit of some of the type of things I like to gather from my kids. I definitely need their contact info, name, age, birthday. Birthday's really useful. Other things I start really digging into, just a variety of things I like to gather. How long does it take them to get to school? Their favorite and least favorite subject, and why. Why was it hard for them? Favorite snack and favorite candy. That comes in very handy later on. Previous and ongoing assessment data, still need that kind of information. But in this presentation, I'll talk about a lot more than just gathering the data from assessments. It's going to be a whole, all the way around, well-rounded version of what kind of information I gather from students. How do they like to learn? Individual, whole group, small group? What's their favorite color? That comes in handy as well. What's their Wi-Fi capability and speed at home? What is their involvement in hobbies, interests, sports, activities, clubs, groups? I dig into all kinds of information and more like this. So these are the kind of things we'll all see, and eventually there'll be some pictures up here of what people shared on their on the gallery walk. All right, so your turn to share as well. As you've been thinking about it, if you pause the video to think kind of about what type of things you like to gather, we're going to use sharing slides to share some of the things we work on today. So you're going to open the share slide link, which I will show you in just a second what it looks like. Grab an empty slide, and that will be what you use today to take notes and share your ideas. Make sure you add your content area, most important, so that people can connect with others that have the same content or see ideas that were shared. And add your notes and your ideas. You do not have to add your name or contact information if you do not want to. That's supposed to say contact. And feel free to decorate your slide if you like. So here's what the sharing slides look like. So it starts off with a page right here, but you would just jump to any slide that's free. There's a lot of open free slides to jump onto. We'll be adding more. And you would add your name. You do not have to add your name if you don't want to, but definitely add your role or your content area so people can connect up and look and see your ideas. Your school email and handle if you want to. You feel free. And over here, list the things that you would like to gather about your students or that you already gather. And over here, when we get to sharing our lesson ideas, list those as well. So the main things we want to make sure everybody fills in is this area, and the role or content up here in the purple, and then the 2 light colored blocks. So take a few moments. You can pause the slides right now, or pause the slideshow right now, and jump in and share a little bit on a slide that you select about what type of things you have gathered from your student, what type of information, and what you would like to gather from your students. Okay, we're going to jump on into how do we gather this info? What are your ideas and our other ideas for gathering the information? And you can also add this on your sharing slide where you take your notes, where you put the type of things you like to gather, put how you like to gather. I like to gather with a student interest survey using a form. I am a Google person. I use Google Forms, but you can also use your Microsoft Forms or any other survey format you want to. Some people use another piece of software, like they're a Seesaw person and they use Seesaw, or they have Clash Dojo and ClassTag. Other ways, you've got all kinds of ways that you can gather it using a survey style application or resource. I've got links here to the student interest survey that I gave my 7th grade students, and this past year I taught a 7th grade math class, as well as doing my digital learning coordinator duties, and that has given me so much insight on ways I was able to use this data and really dig into it and be able to share this with you. And it was a wonderful experience because it really did make a difference in how I connected with my students by using some of this data. It turned out to be a really good thing in so many ways. So I have a sample of my student profile survey. Lots and lots of questions. It took me throughout the week for the kids to keep working on this, to get it. Each day they worked on it to get it filled in. And I've got lots and lots of questions. All those things I shared that I like to ask the kids, plus more. I've also got a survey that was shared with me by a friend who researched a lot about the multiple intelligences. And this really helped me as well. So all I did was have them select a yes or no on different sections. Like this happens to be musical intelligence right here. So I found out how many kids were yeses and how many were nos. There was one about intrapersonal. If you're familiar with the 8 or 9 multiple intelligences, there's one for each. And you'll be able to see the data that came from these as well. So you're welcome to look at those surveys. Also, if you click here or here, you can make your own copy of these surveys for yourself. It will come up as a template, and you'll click use this template, and you'll be able to have your own copy of this survey to tweak and adjust for any way you need it. Take out the questions you don't want, add in the questions you do. Also, here's a little bit of info about converting Google Forms to Microsoft Forms. So there is a way to change that up in case you are a Microsoft user. The main way I like to gather information was from surveys. Assessment data, of course, we still need that stuff, and I used that as well. So formative and summative assessment data also went into my data collection. In previous years, I worked with middle schoolers in another capacity of a STEM technology classroom. We did what's called a passion board. We had information about, show what you can do. And we had some information about some people up here that really showed what they can do. They didn't just talk about it, they did it. And then I had the kids tell me, what can you do? And they were telling me about their dreams on this board. And this stayed up all year long, and I used it all the time just to think about what is it the kids' interested in, what are their goals, what are their passions and their dreams. So I had that as an option as well. If there were things that I didn't gather on my survey, I used my bell ringers and exit tickets to just do a quick little survey of some sort, or a quick little tidbit to gather one quick information. I'm like, ooh, I didn't put this on my survey, but I need to know this. So I would do these periodically just to add some new information to my survey gathering information. And any other data gathering ideas, if you have any, add them to your note slide and people can see what you're sharing. So lots of different ways to get this information, but surveys were definitely my way to do that. If you are an administrator or an educational leader, this can be really useful for you as well. As an administrator in a school, you can give your teachers the same type of survey and create your own profiles for them so that you have got this personalized information and things that little bits of things that you know about them that they forgot that you knew is powerful. You can group your staff for meetings and other gatherings based on their interests, their needs, the way they like to work together. Organize your meetings based on the different variables from the data you gathered. You could team them up in different ways. Like, this group is really good at doing this kind of thing, so we're going to let them take care of that and then show it to all the rest of the staff, and so on and so on. Not to mention, as an administrator, you can do a school-wide get to know the students, sharing wall, passion board, survey. That way you have information on the entire student body, not just a teacher's class using theirs, but use it as an administrator. Do a passion board on the top of the school and let everybody share their information. Tough to make sure that everybody follows instructions, keeps it clean, but you might have your ways of handling that as well. But all kinds of ideas as an administrator or an educational leader to do this with your staff and your students. If you've got littles, kindergarten, first grader, most likely second graders, will either not be able to or will have a tough time answering all the survey questions. Our kindies barely can read at the beginning of the year, and usually that's when you want to give these surveys. So they might need some help. I recommend sending these surveys to the parents and let them fill it all out. Perhaps even do just a few questions at a time across a couple of weeks, either through surveys, class tag, Class Dojo, or something similar. So that's not too daunting a task for the parents. Oop, got a spelling error there. Third, fourth, and fifth graders usually answer pretty well, but we may need some help with some understanding of some of the questions, what they're asking, depending on the type of information you're gathering. So you can work with them as you go through it. You could even say, okay, question number 1 is asking you this. Why don't you go ahead and answer that right now? And then just kind of work through question by question with them over a period of time. I do know that Google, as soon as if they're logged in, which we would want them to be logged into their account when they fill out the survey, it saves that information while they're in their account. So if they leave it that day and come back the next day, what they've put in is already there. I'm pretty sure Microsoft does that too. So, and that's one of the little helpful little tidbits about when you've got littles and the ways to get this information from the kids that can't read and answer the questions. All right, so now let's take some time to start creating your own survey. You can make copies of those shared surveys if you like and adjust them for your needs, or just start in on your brand new own survey and organize that list of information you like to gather. And feel free to share a link to your survey in your note slide. So if you're up here in your note slide and you've gathered all this information, like how I like to gather it, what kinds of things I like to gather, here's a link to the survey I'm working on. And you could probably just share the viewer's version of that. Like in Google, you share it so they start filling it out. The user's version, you can share that link as well. Also connect up with buddies. So in the physical workshop, you'll be able to access the results from that first survey we did in the pink box, and everybody's information will be here. So you'll be able to connect up and find people that share the same content area or role as you. This are similar in the ways they like to gather information. Similar in the way they like to learn too. I've asked that question: how do you like to work? Individual, small group, large group, whole group, and then contact information if you're willing to share it. So this is all there for you guys to go and connect up with other people. So use that spreadsheet to connect up with a buddy that you might be interested in one day. If you're looking at that later, it'll be more filled out later on from all the people that visit the workshop. And you'll be able to connect up with people and see what they've done, see what they've shared, so you can find collaboration people to work with. All right, we'll take a moment. If you want to take a moment to pause and just kind of start thinking about your survey and get a start on it, you're welcome to. And then you can come back and hit play and jump back in, and we'll look at data. So organizing this data. We've got samples here of the data that I took. This one's student survey and the multiple intelligences. These are the actual data from my students. They're just all Jane Doe right now. Don't have any names here to protect the privacy, but you can see through here all of the data I gathered from my kids, and this is their true data. Anything that was really specific I might have taken out, but I've taken off the names, so they got into depth on what they really liked. Here's a question I asked. I didn't mention this earlier. You can interview one significant person from the present and one from the past. Who would you interview and why? They would got some really interesting. I was really impressed with some of the things that these kids put down and who they would like to talk to and learn about. All the information is there. The things from What Else, I really learned the most from my kids right here. This one student here, he's very determined and always tries his best. It turned out to be unbelievably true. Amazing student. Favorite flower. It turns out this student is a daisy fan just like me, and I love daisies. And so we would collaborate on that a lot. I found out some people like arts and crafts. One little girl, terrified of tornadoes. That really became a source of connection later on throughout the year, especially when tornado season was rolling through. Lots of things I was able to gather, and it's all here. And I was going to talk a little bit about how I use this data. Here's another look at the multiple intelligences. Here's how that looks out. Yeses and nos. And I made a quick little formula so you can duplicate this if you need to. It counts how many yeses there were in the rows in the columns for that topic. So I know who my high level musical people are. I know who my high level naturalists are. Verbal and linguistic, visual, spatial. I taught math, so lots of times I use that column. Logical, lots of times I use that column as well. So I have all that information here. Some quick little tidbits about sorting through this data. One thing you've noticed in a big spreadsheet, as you scroll to the right, you don't want to lose your left-hand columns as to who's in this row? Who am I looking at when I look at this detail? Which Jane Doe told me they thought that there were a lot of steps for certain problems. Which was that Jane Doe? So I would freeze this column. So if I click on the column, I go up to the View menu and go to Freeze, up to column B. And I can also do it with a row too. So I could go up here to row 1 and say View, Freeze, up to row 1. And that way when I scroll down, I still see my column headers too. Nice little tool to have. And I do believe everything, Microsoft versions and Google versions, have a feature like that. I also would do simple sorting. I could come up here and click on the column about the musical students, or let's go on down to the column about visual and spatial learners. Since I use this column a lot, I would click the column and either go up to the data and tell it to sort a certain range, or I can just click on the top of the column and say sort the whole sheet from either Z to A or A to Z. Z to A is descending, and I would do that so I could see the highest numbers. So I know which kids were very visual spatial learners. These top several kids are my visual and spatial learners. And I would use that to make my groups and classes and have them as group leaders or team leaders, depending on that type of content. We'll talk a little more about that later as well. Let's see, what's another thing I used to like to do? Just clicking and putting in colors. I could search out words that had a certain word that I needed to know. Like I needed to know all my English language arts fans. I put in green. So if I hold down my Command or Control key, I can go down and select just the ones where I saw English language. Go up to the little filling tool. Both Microsoft and Google have some kind of fill for their cells, and give it a particular color. And then I would go back and do the same for science. And then go back and give a particular color for that. And I did my math. I did things like art, PE, and some others. I left them as no colors. I had social studies or history for light blue. So I would color code things. There is a tool for filtering as well. You can filter out just in this column. You would create a filter and you give a keyword of ELA or English language or math or whatever, and English language arts or math, or just a keyword. And that would knock out all other cells that don't match it and only leave you those cells, so it's easier to do a quick color code so you don't have to search through the whole column, especially if your column is long with a lot of stuff in there. Let's some of the other things that we can do. Conditional formatting, and that's what I did on these slides. So I could just quickly, these slides had certain responses that they selected from. They could select from not interested, somewhat interested, very interested. And then I could do a quick color coding. So I could select the whole chunk of columns here of all the ones that fell under this type of category, and I go up to the format and do conditional formatting. And I would go to different rules. Let's close this up for a second, see if I can find my rules. Format, conditional formatting. Here's our rules. You can add a rule that if the cell contains the words not interested, I would change the fill to a certain color, maybe like this orange color. Let's see, and I'm flying it to the range, and then I would click the done button and it would hold out the colors. Let me go back and do go back to where it was. We'll go back to a row that actually had it there. There they are. It would give me the colors I want. So let's just do this column and do format, conditional formatting. I'm going to cancel that. And it would show me the rules. You would add the rules, so it would give me these color codings. And it's not showing me the color codings at the moment, but that's how I would get these codings there, different colors there. And it would take care of that for the whole column or the whole section of columns for me by just adding a specific rule there and telling it if the text contains a certain particular word or set of words or whatever it is, it would pop them out, like not, would bring me just the not interested ones, and I could pick a color. And that would show me how to do that. If you need to see real specifics on how to do this, take this link and go off to this special spreadsheet, which has videos for each thing on each different task. How do I freeze columns and rows? How do I sort data? Just like I was showing you briefly, this will give you everything you know to go back and actually dig into it more detail. How do I just make colored cells? How do I do that conditional formatting? How do I do that filtering so I can pull out just the rows that have English language arts, or just the rows that have the word math in them based on particular columns or groups of columns? So feel free to go to any of these videos. If you click it, it should take you to a YouTube video from my YouTube channel with all of that detail. So if you want to learn more about digging deeper into organizing that data so that you can see how I really broke it all down into different colors and really got details on there. Here's another one down here where I had details based on when are they doing these particular tasks. Not very much, sometimes, very much, all the time, never. And I had colors pop up. So I can easily, the way the colors are so helpful with the conditional formatting and the color coding is so that I can just jump right in and quickly see who are my nevers. When are they using the computer? How frequently do you do the following task? And this says visiting chat rooms. Not many kids visit chat rooms, apparently. Sometimes kids would do homework on their computer. Sometimes kids would do research. And so I could quickly see, here's another one, social networking. Kind of surprised me to see that a lot of them picked never. Unless they just weren't quite sure what I meant when I said social networking. Twitter, Snapchat, all of those, they might not have realized what I was talking about. Exchanging email. Kids don't email anymore. They text. They chat. They Snapchat. They do all of those apps that let them interact that way. They don't really text anymore. So there were a lot of nevers here. These things, and these are things I stopped and talked to the kids about. I'd be like, everybody put never for emails. I said, y'all not emailing? They're like, no, we use this tool and this tool. And excuse me, it was a chance to really dig in and see quickly what information I could gather from my students. Not what I gathered, but how I can analyze the data that I gathered from them. You are welcome to get a copy of this data. Oops. Click right here, and you will get your own copy. You can make a copy of the data. It will take you to force you a copy. So you can have the copy of that data so you can explore. Speaking of exploring, if you need to take a pause on the video, go ahead and pause and take a few minutes to explore those data spreadsheets. Try some of your own. There are links to the sample data. Take your own copy. And try some of those things like the color coding, the sorting, the formatting. Those are your copies of the data, so feel free. So take a moment to pause and the video and try it yourself. Okay, next we will jump into, let's start using this data. We've gathered our data, we've organized it, we've analyzed it. Let's start looking at how we're going to go ahead and start using it. I decided to take my big spreadsheets, which were these two, all of that data, and I made myself a specific student profile, separate spreadsheet. I opened up a new spreadsheet and put the details in there. I put in, also I had myself a tab for parent contact information as well, because that's one of the things I gathered. It was private information, so I just did not put it in this sample, but I had another tab down here where I put all parent contact info, the phone numbers, the emails, the contact, the things they needed to share with me. But I also had just my own profile that is my everyday, and I truly use this almost every day. I would stop and glimpse at this when I needed something. All my alerts, like health alert type of things, who had allergies, information that they shared me from their other information column, I would put it here. Were they allowed to have their picture put somewhere? Got to go find that FERPA information. Just check boxes. Did they turn in certain forms? I would change this form up to what I needed to make sure I had gathered from them. Birthday, very important. A lot of people do this. Had a treasure box handy when their birthday was up that day. They always signed in the morning on a big board, and they would just scratch off their name. There would be a birthday sticker next to their name if it was their birthday that day, and they got to hit the treasure box. Quickly on what was their Wi-Fi, how long did it take them to get to school. So it's things from my big spreadsheet that I knew I needed more frequently. I literally copied them and pasted them into here, and this was my daily thing. These were the important things that were timely that I needed, and I kept pulling them out and putting them in here from the big spreadsheet. Their interest, favorite color was a big one, and I'll share later about how I really made some connections with kids. Favorite snack, food, and candy, definitely a big one as well. They love some candy. The career interests, so I just kept going through. I did also have performance stand data. I did spot checks periodically throughout the year. I'll show you more about that. And I would keep that data handy as they took each spot check, and just kind of quickly changed up this column frequently as to performance status. Are they high, ready to move on? Are they progressing and doing good? Are they struggling and I need to remediate? So I kept these things. This is my daily/weekly profile spreadsheet. And I would pull new stuff in. And if I thought of something new I needed to gather that wasn't in the main survey, I would gather it and add it here. This helped me the most. It's definitely nice to have this. You got to have this to start with to gather all the main information. And then this was my everyday thing. Definitely every week. I looked at this all the time. So definitely recommend making a separate spreadsheet. It's a little bit of a time taker at the front loading end, but then it takes no time to maintain or just view during the year. I was always looking at that. So that gave me a chance to really start making some serious connections with my kids. And here's some of those examples. 75% of my kids liked working with small groups, so that prompted me a lot of small group rotation station lesson plans. I did lots of blended learning rotation stations, so they would spend, the bulk of the week on rotating stations at their own pace, differentiated and personalized for them. The multiple intelligences was really helpful in me setting up teams. If they were high spatial and logical intelligence, they were great as leaders or participants, and each group had a person in that had that strength when we were in the geometry unit. High interpersonal intelligence were placed in groups that involved discussion because they were great at interacting with the kids well, and discussion and leading discussions and getting discussions going. Each team, I made sure they had one of the high multiple intelligence students. Favorite color and candy, made a big deal. I had a student that struggled a lot and never brought a pencil, and I had little boxes of colored little clicker pencils, and she would come up and get a pencil all the time, and I'd pull out a pink one. I'm like, you like the pink, right? And her eyes would just light up, realizing that I remembered that she liked pink. And every time I pulled out a pink one, she appreciated that. And there was lots of things that I was able to make connections with her based on this. Her part on the survey said that she had a hard time making friends, and she did not have a lot of friends, and that was a connection I was able to make with her. She wound up leaving the school early because she had so many struggles, but when she was talking with the leaders of the school and the leaders of the school system, her mom mentioned that myself and another teacher were the ones that she felt safest with because of the way we made our connections. It was very powerful. Favorite candy was also really fun for the kids. We did a reward every quarter, kind of like Harry Potter houses, and the winning house or winning team got like a little pizza donut party. And I also would bring them their favorite candy. Each of those kids, there's usually only 4 or 5 in that group that would win the team, that would bring each of them their favorite candy. So I would hand one to the kid. I'm like, "You're a Hershey fan, right?" And I was like, you like what was it, Lerd Ropes? And I was like, "You like the sour candies," and they would just be like so excited that I remembered and realized that what their favorite candy was, and it was personalized what they got as a goodie. Other informations, conversation starters, opportunity to focus on their needs. Kids that struggle with making friends, like that student I was mentioning before. My student that was terrified of tornadoes, she also did not like crowds and tornado shells. Everything freaked her out. So she actually was able to come into my office during lunches. Her and some other friends that had issues like that nearly every day got to spend lunch in my office with me if I was in my office. The tornado drills, I was able to connect it with every one of her teachers and say she needs a special place to go when it's a tornado drill. She wants a safer space. So she got to go into a special room. And if it was near my office, she would come in my office because it was an interior room. But having that connection had made the biggest bond with that child. It helped her a lot. Her parents were so appreciative. And it fosters that open door vibe. The students feel comfortable communicating. I would be able to take stuff that I knew about them from their surveys, and just be able to have conversations during open time in class. One of my kids loves horses and had 2 of them. We talked about her horses all the time. One of them loved Motley Crue. We went over and we talked about Motley Crue. He was really surprised that I'd ever been to one of their concerts. And I was like, yes, I've been to their concert. And we were able to bond on these different information. So it's very powerful to make these connections with the students. And along with that, it's very powerful to be able to adjust and personalize your lessons based on using that data. So I'm going to show in the next few slides some of the lessons that I designed and the activities that I designed based on personalizing. A lot of these don't have links to them, but if you would like to see one of those lesson ideas, just give me a shout in the questions column over there in the Padlet. Let me go, "I would love to see your lesson you showed on so-and-so." Stick that in there, and I will get that back to you. So personalized learning paths were one thing. Based on the interest and how they prefer to learn that I saw in the surveys and the spreadsheets, also whether they were logical learners or spatial learners and stuff. I did, like I was mentioning before, lots of rotation stations. So they would have a station on small group where they came up to me while everybody else was continuing to work on their stations. They would have a independent learning station where they would go into the content based on their choice of how they wanted to learn the content. They would have an exploration station, and sometimes I differentiated those based on the needs and where they might be struggling. And then there's usually a project or a product station. So if they were big readers, I would give them an article to explore and dig the content out of. If they were creative, loved to draw, a lot of creative drawers in my classroom, they were given different outlets where they could get creative and design and develop something or get artistic. My geometry activity of cutting out circles and making a design with circles, or creating a news clip based on creating their own picture or using a picture that they found, and to create a news clip and get their own creative juices flowing. If they were spatial learners or auditory learners, they were given demonstration video type of things where it walked them through and they could hear it, view it, and see it. And if they were logical learners, I gave them simulators a lot of times so they could design and work through the problems using the simulator that really showed them how it works. And depending on how they like to learn, some were individualized and some were partners and some were small groups. So here's a little more about the differentiated rotation stations. The specific activities within the rotation stations were differentiated based on who's struggling. So this is a page that might, as example of a start off of a rotation station we did on understanding the data with the mean, median mode. So everybody had their different stations to do. But in the independent learnings, in the exploration station, they had been grouped by color. And I was very subtly told them what color they were. So it wasn't too obvious. I mean, they kind of knew they were in different colors, but I subtly grouped them into colors based on who was struggling with it, who was ready to move on, and who was doing well and just continued practice. And so they could pair up and partner up in some of these activities, or they could do individual. Here's an example of the differentiated exploration station. They had purple, pink, or green as their group color. Or I think it was like purplish green or bluish. And they had different types of levels of this. The green was a little more detailed. Green was the group that was ready to move on. So I had them do something more intense called mean average deviation. And that was tougher. The design a data set was just those ones that are struggling, that needed to really kind of go back and review some of the original first parts of that content area. So they had just straight up designing the set and putting the data down. The middle group that was doing well, just needed to keep on practicing, had to analyze a little further of the data set. So each group, they picked the sheet that had their color, and that's the one they worked out when they did that station. So I differentiated based on the data I'd been gathering throughout the term. So just even using that data was something I would use for differentiating and personalizing my lessons. Collaborative tasks would be based on their strengths. So this is like another, probably had some geometry stuff. I use the multiple intelligences to partner up to group up these kids. So they had to work on activities for understanding circles and circumference and understanding circles with area. So they would work in teams. The teams had different roles. There was somebody that had to record and write in the document, somebody that had to be the liaison, which is the only person that comes to me to ask questions. They had a materials handler and then a materials collector. So one person had to go up and get the materials, and one person did most of the handling while the others helped. But in there, I had to make sure that I pulled my spatial learners and logical learners. Each team had a spatial learner, and each team had a logical learner. So that, because that's what's going to do a lot with these activities, are relied on having somebody that was spatially adept and logically adept. So I was able to really really make my groups based on their needs and what I knew. And this was a big one that we used. My end of year EOG prep. We did monthly or every other week spot checks throughout the year, going back and assessing content from the past semester and earlier times. And the year-end struggle areas were compared with a spot check information so I could individualize their pathways when I was giving them tasks for the end of year prep. So we spent a whole week prepping for the end of year for the EOG, and they had a big, long, almost like a rotation station where there were like probably 10 or 12 different units that we had tons of tasks from that they could choose from. But the students were required to complete their assigned prep activities before they could go on and choose any others. So their assigned was based on their spot check data throughout the year, all the units, the strugglers, whatever it was they were struggling with. I was able to pull that information from all my data spreadsheets. A lot of the spot checks I would move over into my daily profile spreadsheet so I can keep track of that. And then all their data from their grades. I was able to use that to really get detailed. So we use Google Classroom. I assigned them the end of year prep station activity. They had track of their own spot checks, and I had track of their spot checks. And they had to keep track of their goals as well. Excuse me. So they would work through their spot checks and keep track of it, and then also make their own goals and try to work towards it. What were their strategies? So they were doing this throughout the year. So based on my data, and their goals is where I said, okay, little Johnny needs to focus on this unit, and this unit first. And then he can go on and pick other units from all the options to select from. based on either his goals or something that he felt like he needed to work on. And it was different for little Mary and little Susie and little Tony. You know, everybody had their own profile. So I delivered them a personal message in each of their Google Classroom. When I sent the assignment, they each got a personal message that said, you're required to do this one, this one, this one, and this one. And then you can pick any more to get up to 7 stations. So they each had different stations to cover. So that's in this EOG prep stations with all the colors. And within each station, they had several options. So if I told them they had to do equations and they had to do inequalities, they could pick anything from within there. There were 3 or 4 options within there. And here's some details on what they were required to do. And here's a little quick sampler of what they were offered from like the probability. So if they were told they had to do statistics and probability, they had to pick from one of these activities to try. They had to do that first, along with the other assigned ones. Then they went on and got to pick. They had to do 7 total that week, or more if they chose to. So these are just some examples of some different things that I did to really personalize their lessons and their interaction while they learned about math during the year, using all of that profile data. It became very powerful. It became very helpful too. So now your turn to share ideas. So you can pause this, and in a moment you can pause the video and stop and think about what kind of ideas would you like to do? What kind of lessons would you like to put together? I'd like to do so-and-so with my unit on so-and-so and give a little bit of detail. So once again, you're welcome. Those in the physical workshop would be finding a buddy possibly if they want to, or they can work independently and jump in and start talking about some ideas they might have to personalize lessons based on the type of information they want to gather from their kids. And then, of course, once again, go back to your note slides and fill that information in here. You can bullet it, or you can write little paragraphs. You're welcome to size any of this differently on your slide to make sure everything fits. Delete, if you're not giving contact information, just delete it so you can make sure everything fits and move things around. You have access to do whatever you need to on your slide. Just be careful, try to stay on your slide. Don't accidentally jump into someone else's slide and start typing. Make sure it's your slide first. So share some of your ideas on those, on your slide about how you might want to start thinking about personalizing lessons based on the type of information you want to gather. So you can pause at any moment on the slides and jump in and share your ideas. All right. So we're back again. Now that you've shared your thoughts or kind of been starting to think through, took some notes on your slide about how you want to gather your information from your kids, what information you want to gather, and how you'd like to differentiate your lessons after seeing some samples there. What's your takeaway? In the last column of the Padlet, share something you learned that you are most excited about. So here in column 3, give me your takeaway. Share what jumped out of you. I always hope that someone finds one thing about the day's session that they got excited about, and that there's like definitely going back and doing this. So share your takeaway on that Padlet. And I'll let you pause. You can pause the video again just to share that. But I will jump in by saying thank you for hopping in and choosing to view this video and take a look at the different things that I have done to really get to know my students on a deeper level and win their hearts. There were many kids in my class that I really won their hearts just because I took the moments to get that information, dig into it, analyze it, and use it by connecting up with those kids on the things that they did not even realize that I remembered about them or knew about them. They'd forgotten what they put on the survey and were so amazing. Like, you my favorite color? You know that I love Hershey's? Oh my God. Oh, you know that I do that? I like horses. It was just amazing to see their faces and make those connections and build those relationships. I got some really good relationship building with these students, and it really made a difference in how they responded when I taught too. You tried to be really real with them, and having that information about them really helped with that. So I appreciate you jumping in. I hope that you get the same experience that I did using data with my kids like this. And not just numerical data, but the really deep get to know them data. Feel free to ask me any questions. You can contact me directly or put them in the questions in the Padlet. Then my contact information is here. Emails here, Twitter accounts here. I'm not the best at tweeting. I should tweet more. Should have been tweeting all of the stuff that the kids were doing in class this past year, but doing double duty, really hard to tweet a lot. So I'll have to own that and say, this full disclosure, I'm not the best tweeter in the world. But definitely email me if you need to. And thank you so much for joining me on this journey today. And I hope that you find something you can do in this year and you find joy in really getting to know the students in the coming year. I hope you have a wonderful school year.